6:01 p.m. and the Board of Commissioners of the Hardwick Electric Department is meeting. It is May 20th, 2025. All of the commissioners are present, as is General Manager Bryce and Beth Essery, and we have two people from the public. Would you care to identify yourselves?
Is that important?
Yes, Courtney. The first item on the agenda is approval or modification of the agenda. Are there any modifications?
I have one request about the June and July meetings, if we can put that near the end, just to,
Okay.
if possible. Please, thank you.
I would also like to have a brief discussion of outage reporting
Okay.
at the end of the agenda. And also, I think that the discussion related to contracts, both in terms of the FEMA and the VTDEC,
Okay.
need to be an executive session.
Okay.
And then we would take any action outside of executive session. With those modifications, is the agenda approved?
I'll make a motion that we
Okay.
approve.
Okay, and which takes us to minutes, and we have the minutes from the meeting of April 15th.
I move to approve the minutes from the meeting of April 15th.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. And we have the minutes from the meeting of May 13th. Is there a motion?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes as they are.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the minutes are approved. Which takes us then to the financial reports. Oh, I'm sorry, public comment. I'm so used to it.
Courtney's.
Sorry about that, my apologies. Is there something that you would like to speak about?
Yeah, something specific. Your tree trimming, well, not yours, whoever you hired for tree trimming last month, I guess it was, or earlier this month on East Hill Road in Woolpit. They took down a bush of mine that I didn't want taken down, that isn't obstructing anything any more than several other trees and bushes near us that I have photographs of that weren't taken down. I saw them just after they got past this driveway, and I went down to the crew and I just asked them, I said, is there, like, what are the numbers? Like, what was this bush in violation of? And he said something about, 10 feet, 25 feet, I forget exactly, but he said, oh, why? Do you have something you want to keep? Indicating that it's at his discretion whether or not to take something down if somebody requests. I said, yeah, you already took it down. I spoke to Sarah, and I think we established that it is possible if you have something growing on your property that you don't want taken down, that it is possible to say, I would like an exception made for this. I think that because I received no notification that this was going to be happening and I wasn't given an opportunity to say I would not like this taken down, that this was taken down in error. And I would like another similarly sized bush planted in its place.
What are we talking about? I think you should have gotten notice, and that's something that we will be discussing in terms of having a clearer policy on notice, giving people meaningful notice, which I think we had thought was being done, but apparently was not.
And like I said, within a half mile of our house on either direction, where they went through, where you can see wood chips where they cut, there's trees that they obviously just made a judgment call saying, no, we won't take that one down. This bush that, I have pictures of it if you'd like to look, it never would have grown up to touch the wires.
I don't think that's the issue. The issue, there is a 25-foot
It's 40 feet from the pole.
It's not the pole, it's the wire.
It
It's,
had
it's,
to be, it's a bush that wasn't
I'm not saying,
taller
I'm
than
not,
me.
I don't wanna argue with you, I understand that, what you're saying, and I accept that. I was under the impression that everything was supposed to be cleared in the right of way.
I assumed.
But evidently it hasn't, and I guess what I'm asking is, what kind of bush was it, and what would it cost for you to replace it?
I don't know exactly what kind of bush it was. I never done that close of an inspection of it. I liked it there. It's new construction. I actually put the driveway where it is because it was framed by this particular bush. Small tree, bush, large bush, I don't know. Just something similar to go there. I don't have any idea.
Do you have a picture of what it was before?
Yeah, I do.
Do you have you seen that, Sal?
I've seen one of the pictures from before
Okay.
and after.
Should I?
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, what I'm trying to.
This is what it was. As you can see, it's pretty small. I don't think it's something like that would ever grow up to touch the wires above it. That's what it is now.
It kind of depends on what it was. I don't know what kind of bush
Do
this
you have any
is.
guess what kind of bush that might have been?
I mean,
Green
it's
one.
growing there naturally, it wasn't
Yeah, it wasn't something
anything
that we
ornamental.
planted.
Let's do
but
one.
we'd
Someone
like
else
to-
will move it.
You might,
We'll see that.
I mean, we don't have the resources, I think, unless, correct me, Sarah, to go and find it, plant a bush. We're not gardeners.
Well, you're not tree trimmers either, but you hired somebody to do that.
It's part of our but planting is not part of the regular work.
Because you've got more.
What I was going to suggest is that you let us know, that you find a bush that you think is appropriate and what it would cost, and we reimburse you for that.
That's fine.
That's my suggestion. I don't know how other members of the board think. I
I
think
think
that,
Rena's got some question based on his experience being in the field.
Rena?
From what I'm looking at, it looks like it's right under the power line.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, and it's for a maintenance purpose that it was removed. If wires come down, you have to be able to string wires
I
back
have
up.
pictures of other trees and bushes along this road that are right under the power line that are obviously.
Apple trees would stay, because that's a Vermont statute that provides food for wildlife. Most everything else under the power line gets cleared. And if you were to plant something back, our suggestion would be to,
I would plant it a little further back.
yes, absolutely. You know, it's as much for maintenance purposes and all issues. In fact, if they wanted to bury a power line in that right of way, they would have to remove that bush anyways.
Okay, but they're not.
What's that?
But they're not. That's not something that's happening. That's not on the schedule in the future anytime soon, is it?
But it could. I mean, even any communication could go down that right of way.
Understood. Are you saying you don't want to give me compensation?
Well,
in this area?
That's
No, I think
something we would have to
we have to
discuss.
discuss. I mean, Rena's pointed out something that I was unaware of. I know that we have the ability to clear everything in the entire right of way. You're saying that it hasn't been done in other places? I don't know, maybe they were apple trees, maybe they weren't.
A couple of them were fruit trees. Some of them aren't.
But
I mean, I guess these are
But I've
probably
never
some
been-
sort of fruit tree.
So fruiting
They're
trees.
definitely growing into the wires. I mean, this is a matter of like safety and power for people, right? I mean,
It's a matter of maintenance. It's a matter of clearing the right of way.
to be clear, so you said notification should have been sent out, and as far as my conversation with Sarah
when I'm
goes-
using the word should, I'm not speaking in a legal sense. I'm talking as a
It is
criticism.
possible for somebody, for a property owner, to specify, I would not like these taken down.
If it's a safety issue, it doesn't matter. I think that's what Reno is saying. If it's a
Yeah.
safety issue, it comes down. I don't know whether the bush is or is not a safety issue.
Even
Reno
if
is
it
saying
were
that it is.
outside of the right-of-way leading towards the power line, the 25-foot is from ground to sky.
Yeah. Here are bushes growing all around us, right underneath the
Yeah,
power line.
we can't see the pictures from here.
Here, look at these. Some of these are growing close enough that the branches would fall into the power line. Some of them are growing right under the power line. One
Yeah.
picture there is, I believe, fruit trees. I didn't realize there
Have-
was an exemption for fruit trees.
This is a secondary line, has a different statute. This is a service that goes to a house. This is an apple tree. They may not have gotten to this point.
No, they did get to that point. This is all.
Without knowing exactly,
I know exactly. I live on that road. I saw them doing it.
and sometimes they'll go through and cut and do trimming later, and haven't been back to do the side cutting or trimming, and they may do that a week down the road, 2 weeks down the road. I can't tell you. These are all apple trees. This is an apple tree. And I'm not sure what I'm looking at here, but that's,
They're all pictures of trees and bushes that are growing under power lines or within 25 feet of the power lines. And I understand
A
that
lot
some
of
of them are
those-
apple trees, but not all of them are apple trees.
Well,
That's
there's-
all an area that they.
there's a lot of them here.
I mean, I understood that they
So
hadn't
there's
been
a
through
difference
their
between under
pruning
the
in
line and
years.
within the,
Like, that was what, I think that's what you said, and that's what the pruning crew had said as well. It had been a long time since they'd gotten to East Hill Road.
There's been, I mean, the make-ready work for some of the communications build-out has precipitated clearing and right-of-way clearance more so than it has in a few years, correct?
So I mean, first,
So,
I doubt that they're coming back to get these trees in this picture. They went right by them. I don't know why they would have skipped these specifically and just done others across the street or right next to them and not done that and said, oh, we'll come back another day, even though we're right here, right now, cutting down
But,
trees.
yes, but they may not do the trimming on the same day, as one person is doing the cutting and the others are pulling brush. They won't set up the bucket truck and do the side cutting. They'll vary all of that
They
stuff.
had all that equipment. They had the bucket truck, they had the chipper, they had everything they need to do all the work.
And
They were
that's,
doing it all up and down the road.
I have a suggestion. I think we should focus on making things right for you.
That's
Rather
all I would
than-
like is
rather than
compensation
your-
for another bush.
Yeah, but rather than talking about neighbors and, because it's hard for us to know what was going on. We know for sure what happened to you. We don't know what happened down the road this way or that way. We absolutely know for sure what our policy is, and it's not something we made up. All utilities have to follow it. So we have a policy on clearing, and if our crews violate the policy, then we're in the wrong. If they don't violate the policy, then we're not in the wrong. This crew, according to what Reno said, it didn't violate the policy. It's not an apple tree. I think we're still feeling bad that we didn't give you notification. And because it's always better to talk before the thing happens. You know, it might have still happened, but at least you wouldn't have been surprised by it.
If I had been notified before it
Yeah.
happened, I
Yeah.
would not be here
Yeah.
complaining about it.
So that's what we're feeling like now. The problem, I think where we just went, we were about to say, get it all resolved to get a bush. Now I think, based on what Reno said, is we're saying, maybe you want to get an apple tree, or maybe you want to get it, or maybe you want to put it way back.
Before I knew that that was the statute or whatever, I had been considering
Yeah.
that. Apple trees are maybe more, I'm not looking.
Get a
at something
dwarf one
expensive
too.
or-
Get a dwarf apple tree.
but even those are cut below the telephone level, if
Sure.
you'll notice that, and that's, Yeah, and that's for maintenance purposes.
The big grove of apple trees that's in the picture right there is definitely growing into the wires and it's not getting back.
Well, it depends what crew. We have had several different crews out there doing work for us. Communication companies and also our regular cutter. And maybe different applications have been used for the practices that we encourage in our line clearing as well.
No, what I would do, I have an entrance rock that they dug up when they were doing the construction that I had them put at the end of the driveway. That's probably, I think it's a safe distance back from the wires. I would probably plant it closer to that. I planned on planting more trees and shrubs along that edge just to provide some cover.
So it's good that we know what the policy is now, so we don't.
Yeah.
And it's accessible on the website, the right of way? My recollection is it
I
is.
believe so. I can confirm that and make sure that we have that up there.
That would be good too.
So how do people know we're coming to cut along their property line?
Right,
Yeah,
that seems like what we need to work on.
Yeah,
Correct. And I think that's,
Basically tell them we're coming and here's the policy.
Right.
Here's what to expect
Yeah,
and we're coming.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I think the point is we just felt kind of blindsided
Yeah.
by this.
Understandably.
landscape that suddenly disappeared and we got no warning.
Yep.
so I think, are we on an apple tree now rather than a bush?
That's a suggestion. We can't dictate what you say.
What is the budget you're willing to allot for a small shrub of some kind?
I
I don't know what shrubs cost.
I don't even know how much.
Come back with a
something
proposal, we'll evaluate it, we'll
100
figure it out.
100.
why don't you see, well, yeah, I mean,
Get a price from someplace.
get
and
a
nursery,
get a
let you know.
price
Yeah.
and if you're
Drop by the
gonna,
office. and-
yeah, and if you're gonna plant it under the line, it's gotta be an apple tree, and otherwise, it should probably be outside the right of way altogether.
Yeah, that's what I'll probably do. I'll either get an apple tree or plant it outside the right of way or both.
And we have a wake-up call to overhaul our notification policies because
I'm really,
what, your feelings are quite understandable.
really sorry that
I'm
you've had the
trying.
aggravation.
As Liz has said, it's really just
I'm trying to picture, that's Wolcott Pond in the back.
I believe so. Oh, no, that's not Wolcott Pond. That's a small,
It's about a mile further south.
yeah, that's a small man-made pond that the previous owner of the property put there.
Okay. I'm trying to picture where it is. That's,
Reno
It's
worked,
about a mile
Reno
south.
worked in the field for years and years and years, so he knows all the lines.
It's just between like the crest of the hill and Allen Road.
Charles Allen Road?
It's between Marsh Road and Allen Road.
Okay. Huh, I can't picture that bush, but. Back of my head, I definitely remember
Might
it.
not have been there when you were doing it. I don't know how long ago you were doing it.
2 years.
Oh, okay.
What good are you if you can't remember?
And 100
Every
before
push from the
that.
service territory.
So do I need to come back to next month's meeting with an estimate? or
No,
can I call somebody?
Bring it to the office.
just send it to Sarah.
Okay,
Thank you for giving us the time.
No,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
No.
and what good is gonna come of it is you've surfaced for us the issue on notification and communication.
I'm glad of that.
It won't help you, but you'll be helping other people, so.
Oh, no, that's excellent.
Thank you for coming to the meeting.
Thank you for hearing us, I appreciate it.
Have a good
Would you
evening.
like me to take
Would
those
you
out?
like those back?
Also, feel free to stay. We never have members.
We have two little kids at home. They're well watching it. We gotta get back. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So I would imagine that it's actually somewhat complicated to coordinate the notification, with adequate time for all the homeowners, which I would think would be weeks across the multiple contractors that we use. So I think this is probably going to be challenging, but also quite necessary from a customer relations standpoint.
Even if we do it on a monthly basis,
Mhm.
and whether we, Roger and I were talking about this, put it in people's mailboxes, or put it in the Gazette, or both.
Yeah.
Did we not have door hangers?
So, yes, we do. They have outdated information, and my understanding is that at some point, we stopped using them, in practice. And
That
I don't
seems
know.
like the best.
Yep.
That's the best,
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's an easy way to notify this quarter, these are the areas we're gonna focus on, because of course, you are 100% correct. It does change, it varies, it's hard to know exactly where the crews are gonna be at all times to be able to provide with certainties. That's where the door hangers are valuable. I think it references the policy that it's unclear whether part of that was actually adopted, what I can find or not, and so I wanted to be sure to have this conversation, and there are ways that I've seen other utilities do it where they, post on their website, these specific weeks, this is where we have crews working. And then.
well,
kind of going from
but
there.
that's in addition to, I mean, I
Yes,
think it's,
right.
I think it's all of the above.
Correct.
The other thing is requiring the people who we
No,
contract with
the website's not
for
adequate.
trimming to adhere to a schedule.
Right.
And
And also, if they decide that they're gonna extend or do a sideline, and it's not been, because they're in the area and it's not been notified, that they could have a few with them and hang their own door hangers, you know?
Even if it's a
There's
day or
5
two
houses
ahead.
on that one tap line, they could go and hang 5,
Yeah, but that's not giving advance notice. If they're out there doing it.
but they could do it a week ahead,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
headed in that direction.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It is true too, that Washington Electric, since they have their fancy newspaper that everybody gets pretty frequently, they do make a point in there to say, this is where we're going. Yeah, so they've obviously run into the same problem.
I was going to ask later with outage notifications if we could be leveraging the town's text and email alert system, which seems to have been working great. And I've been getting alerts, like for example, before the hydrant flushing. It's really helpful to know that it was going to be happening in town.
I've never gotten an alert from the town.
So,
But
I think
but also, we serve Hardwick, but we serve a
Right.
whole bunch of towns,
it,
so
it
we
is
don't know what their
imperfect, but
systems
it
are.
is. I'm proposing it as another tool in the toolbox.
In conversation with the town manager, we did talk about that, and apparently there are several folks from outside of the town specific limits who have signed up for it, and we did talk about the opportunity or the
So
the ability to do
we
that.
do have the ability to do that with our software now. We have not used it, but the capability for email and texts is there with our software now, and we can designate
Well, that's
by,
great.
Fantastic.
by location, cycle, whatever. who
Well,
the
no,
messages go to.
then that's something that we should be looking at.
Okay.
Because these people don't live in Hardwick. They were in Woolcott.
Great. So if we have the capability, let's leverage it.
We need to start using it. We can.
And something else that I think we should look into is we're clearing a lot of roadside. Villages could compensate for some of their roadside clearing as well. We collect from communications and we do roadsides. Villages, I had talked to Chuck Bachelor in Woodbury, and he said it would be a great thing to work together in things like that, and I think it should be brought up to Opie, as we did a lot on Center Road. And we absorbed the whole cost.
Right.
But what's the town, how is the town
They
benefit?
cut a buffer alongside of the road as well, and if we're cutting
Oh, okay,
complete,
all right.
Doing it for them.
why couldn't they contribute to some of their gain?
If there's joint benefits and joint costs, we should be sharing them.
That's right.
But, as long as we're on clearing, one last thing is that, and I was particularly paying attention to it after being out for 4 hours on Friday. There are, I'm sure there are other places too, but certainly along Route 14, there's a forest that's practically on top of the lines, and trees keep coming down. I have had, since the beginning of April, 4 or 5 outages that have lasted over 10 hours total. That's an awful lot of outages. And I don't know what all the causes of them have been, but I see these trees, and this last outage, I think there were maybe multiple outages, but there was a tree on the line on 14.
If from your driveway, when you get to Route 14, there's a little sugaring,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah. From there down to Authentic Log Homes, that whole hillside just topples. Just
Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
I don't know how many times I've cut trees in there.
Yeah, but there's, you would never know that trees have been cut in there. There's
No.
so many trees
Yeah.
there.
So
Yeah.
one thing to consider is, instead of trying to fight the tree part of it, I mean, we still do the right-of-way clearance as it should. There are specific types of wire, covered wire and grouped wire called tree wire that is specifically resistant to when a tree makes contact, it does not take the whole line down. It is usually more expensive, but it is a system upgrade that provides some resilience.
Whatever we should be looking at, I
Correct.
don't,
I
whether
agree.
it's upgrading the nature of the line, whether it's undergrounding the lines, whether it's cutting the trees down, it seems to me that there is a lot of maintenance that isn't being done.
There's a lot of deferred maintenance to occur, correct?
Yeah.
That needs to be addressed, and I think part of that is trying to identify and prioritize, right? Because there is a lot, and then find the access to capital to do it.
Are you talking deferred maintenance generally or deferred tree clearing?
I think the tree clearing did prove to reduce outages over the last year, right?
Oh,
And then we've had
absolutely.
these recent storms, which obviously show that we have work to do, and I think it's both.
It's not only storms, though. It's not only storms. There have been outages when there have been no storms. And it's just a weak tree. It's too close to the line. Anyway, I think we have a lot on the agenda to go
Yeah,
through.
we're really behind schedule.
Yeah.
Could we ask for next meeting for a proposed plan on customer notification ahead of clearing and a proposed plan for declearing?
Yes.
Let's go on to the monthly financial report, and are there any questions on the report? I had one question for Beth, which was what the cash on hand would look like with the purchase power factored in.
So the purchase power was 362,000.
I'm sorry, 362?
362,000,
Okay, so cut in half.
yeah.
Okay. And I did have one other question on the main intro report. Is there a base amount for line extensions and the customer pays the excess, or the customer pays for the whole line extension?
At the whole thing.
So we don't have any sort of standard line extension to a we don't have any standard service drop that is just part of becoming a customer?
I'm not aware of one.
Okay.
Well, a line of extension isn't a specific, each one is different.
Right, but some utilities include the cost of 100 feet.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a transformer, or 100 feet, and then the customer pays the excess
I
over
had
that.
assumed we had that. If we do not,
I
I would
thought we
certainly
did.
advocate for us.
I
to-
thought we did also until I read this report,
Yep.
and it sounded like we didn't, and that's why I was.
There is some built into the cost estimate that Brian puts together for each customer. There is, and the first 100 feet, you are correct. The first 100 feet
Okay.
it's just additional to that and building out, and the actual transformer, the transformer is not included.
Okay, but
But we have updated policies about if a transformer has utility
If it
that,
has useful life.
okay.
Yes.
Correct.
But I'm confused. I mean, is it the policy that if a customer comes in and they need a 75-foot line extension, do we charge them anything?
Transform.
Just the transformer?
And labor, I think. It's the
Labor,
pulled-
miscellaneous materials, overheads.
Okay, it sounds like if
We
if
need-
the 100 feet is covered, then they shouldn't be charged those things, so I think we need clarification on the policy.
Yeah.
And I was also, I was under the impression that we were no longer charging people to have the initial conversation with Hardwick Electric when they want to do a line extension or other customer project. It sounds like we still are. So what is the policy on that?
$250, and if the project goes through, that's credited to their total cost.
Okay, I don't know what's possible in terms of utility practice, but that certainly feels out of line to me as one commissioner as compared with any other work a homeowner might have done. So I would advocate exploring to change that policy.
Yeah, and just to, because I was in the middle of one with one of our ratepayers, I think the question that came up was, if it's an engineering study that takes some real time and some real figuring, then it's reasonable to be charged for it. If it's just a quick and rough, hey, you know, it can be done top of mind, and it can be done quickly, and it really doesn't incur any cost for Hardwick Electric, then charging the
250.
$250 feels punitive.
Yep.
And it seems like it puts a little bit of a barrier between Hardwick Electric and the community. And so I think that the spirit of it was to make sure that if there's a developer or an individual developing a lot, and they're asking complicated questions that are gonna cause us to spin our wheels and spend money, and money is time, you know, it's a meaningful exercise, that shouldn't be free. But where do you get to a simple question that can be answered without a real investment of?
I think it depends, I mean, if the ultimate goal of the questions are to receive a work order estimate of cost,
Yeah.
that takes time, that takes
Okay.
resources, that takes actually visiting
So
the
if they're
the
looking
site,
for a written, to generate.
which
a
we are
written-
required to give if they're,
Right.
you know, if there's
But
a
I think
service.
that
Is
if-
there a
if-
preliminary before that?
If we apply just lived experience from other trades, when I call a plumber, it's very reasonable for them to come out and take a look and say, man, this is an expensive job. It's gonna cost $5,000 at least. And then if I want more detail and if I want a parts list or I want a written estimate, absolutely, then I need to engage, I need to give them a deposit. But I think it's a real customer relation.
So
Mark-
could we
mark
make the
against us.
delineation, the written
Yeah,
estimates?
and I think
that's-
the site visit should also be, you know, one visit should also be totally reasonable to include gratis. We're the ratepayers, you know, it's this entity that they support, and I think we're just shooting ourselves in the foot from the customer relations standpoint.
I think that's,
That was the sentiment we got.
well, and it's unfortunately, the way it's been communicated to some customers was, we can't talk to you until
Right.
you,
Yeah,
That's
until
the way
you
it
give
was
us
communicated.
Yeah.
200, and that's just wrong.
So, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So, just mentioned in a one-liner in my memo, this is a piece of like the financial policies that we're gonna be looking at, where I say we're gonna be reviewing policies and procedures that affect our plant value. All this we're talking about, part of it does affect our plant value. So not just our employee, not just relations with our customers, but it's affecting our books as well. So that's what we're gonna be looking at and studying, and
But we don't want to
Because it-
defer it, and things that affect our community relations, we want to resolve them right now, this minute, if we can.
Well, and I will say that if.
And if you come up with a better idea in
that's
your
the
process, that's great.
And if that's the directive, is that the first communication, first initial outreach should be as part of the service that we provide, I think that should go into outages as well. Right now, the policy is that if come out for an outage call and it's deemed that it's on the customer side of the meter, it's on their system, there's a charge. It's a pretty hefty charge for that visit. And so it actually deters folks from calling if there's an outage. And so I think that should flow through. If that is the choice, to include part of it, and I understand there are very real costs involved.
I think it's reasonable to ask someone to check and make sure that it's not their breaker.
I believe CRC has a checklist that they
And that
tell the
is-
customer to check.
In our answering service, that is a question that
Yes.
they
Yeah.
do ask.
Yes, they
Well,
do.
we can get to our answering service, that's a separate. I think maybe the first time that it happens, that we don't charge, but I suspect there may be some customers who have issues in their homes, who it's gonna happen repeatedly, and if there's no other reported outage and they're not a first timer on it.
Well, part of what we've tried to suggest is that we got a couple of pieces of testing equipment for the crews. So they come out, determine that it is not on our side, they test, they record what they've tested, they let the customer know this is what it's reading, it's not coming from this side, it's coming from, your side of the meter, and then recommend that they contact a few electricians, potentially give them a list of, potential electricians.
Yeah, we
that
have
could
to be
available.
careful about
Giving them names.
giving.
Yeah, it's not to
giving-
endorse,
giving
but
names.
simply to point them in the right direction.
If we're gonna have a list of electricians, we should let people know so that any licensed electrician can be on the list.
But in our policy, our tariff stops at the top of the weatherhead going to the meter socket. We test it at the meter socket. If something is wrong from there down, suggest two. But if it's in the meter socket and it's Friday night at 9 o'clock and these people are gonna be out of power, it's cold, our men are gonna stay there and they're gonna put power back into that house. If it were you, you would want that. And we're paying them 3 hours of time and a half. We've got to charge a customer.
If it's in the meter socket, why is that the customer's cost?
Because their ownership is at the top of the meter, at the top of the weatherhead.
Point of connection.
Well, the meter socket is what the meter is placed
Yeah,
in. That's
yeah.
not our equipment?
No, that belongs to the
The meter is ours.
customer.
So
Well,
you
that's
said-
also another discussion,
Yeah.
because a customer is not gonna be maintaining the meter socket. They shouldn't be anywhere near it.
They should hire an electrician. If a meter socket needs to be replaced, they hire an electrician. We shut the power off.
I think that sounds like
This
another
bears-
policy
this
discussion,
bears a
but I think for
discussion.
right now, as we are ushering in a new day at Hardwick Electric where customer relations are number one priority, it sounds like we should address the main things that we've already talked about, and I would advocate for also announcing that they have been addressed, and in plain language, we want to hear from you. We want you to call. If you have a project you want to discuss, we are here for you. We are your utility. And I think with all of these, with tree trimming as well, the more that we can not refer people to numbers and policy documents, but summarize in plain language and say, here's the deal, and here's what's changed, and here's what you can expect. I fully think that's what I'm advocating for as one person.
Well,
Yes.
and I think having that policy directive, like that's the North Stars that we are, that, and I think that's where past practice, current practice, where do we want to shift or adjust, and having that as the North Star is helpful.
Moving on with just looking at the
Yeah, we're
time.
gonna have to look for this.
Are there any other questions or comments on the financial report? On item 1 of the financial report. Okay, which takes us to item 2. Are there any questions or comments on the Wolcott Hydro Special Construction and Cash Fund report? Moving on. We have the Union Bank line of credit. As was explained, this is a line of credit for $700,000 to address liquidity issues. And I'm flipping to the line of credit, it was 5.75%, Beth, is that correct?
Yes.
And the documents are the same documents that we have used with Union Bank before. Is there a motion
I
to,
moved to authorize
Oh, we have to also,
Line of credit.
you move to enter into?
Enter into it, sign, execute.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay. Which takes us to the next item, which is the 2024 audit, auditor engagement letter. I understand that this is the same form of letter that was used last year. Is there a motion?
I had a quick question.
Is there a motion first before we have discussion?
I
I move to approve the audit engagement letter.
Is there a second?
Second.
Miles, your question.
Are the risks that were highlighted in this engagement letter typical? We've seen this before. Great.
Yes. I verbalize that, yes.
Any other questions or discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Which takes us, and I'm just looking at this, I think before we do the FEMA piece, maybe we do the parts of the general manager's report that don't have to be in executive session.
Oh, because the FEMA one does?
Well, it's to discuss a contract, and I think we ought to at least have the discussion in executive session. And the first item is also to discuss a contract under utility business, item Little Roman 1. And I'm just trying to find the page in here. I should stick sticky tabs in. Okay, the general manager's report was in here.
Page 74.
Thank you. Okay, are there any questions or comments on item 3? So we're going to come back to 1 and 2. So on item 3, I mean, I have a general comment. I don't think we should, just as a matter of course, be using the town's council. I think that we have different issues when we need a lawyer. Well, for example, the hydro project. The town's council may or may not have expertise in construction contracts for that kind of thing. I think we need to look at the specific issue of why we need counsel and act appropriately. And sometimes that may be using the town's council, but it wouldn't be in all cases. And I'm not sure why that maximizes local, efficiency of local government resources. The outside counsel that the town uses.
Well, this one says for specific items, so it's not general. So if there is something that's cross.
But which specific item?
So for instance, the line of credit, right? Some of those legal documents that have to go through both review of both, our council and then also the town's council, and they tend to have something that comes up that they would like to see
Right,
changed.
but we need to have it looked at from the perspective of public utility
Correct.
regulation. And I don't know that that's something that the town's council has particular expertise in. And judging by when we've had issues come up with municipalities or school boards and their councils have not had any familiarity with the regulatory process. So I would be concerned about relying on someone who doesn't know what the requirements are at the Public Utility Commission and public utility law to advise us on what contracts we can enter into
Well,
from a financing standpoint. So again, I don't think we're talking about huge amounts of legal fees here, but
Can we have a separate and dedicated discussion on our our council and the town's council and what our best course of action is. And perhaps that's an executive session.
I don't know why that would need to, there's no basis for having it in executive session.
Well,
I can
it's
see.
personnel that we hire.
Yeah, that's specific employee personnel stuff. I mean, we're not talking about a specific, if we're having a discussion about a specific contract, or a specific employee, we can have that in executive session. But I don't think we can have a general discussion of the parameters for hiring counsel in executive session.
Let me rephrase. Perhaps we should have an executive session at another meeting about when we use our council and when we use the town's council.
Again, I don't think it's an executive session. If
So just make it an agenda item, we'll do it the next meeting.
Okay.
And
That's fine.
specifically for the work that needs to be done immediately, for immediate matters. We've been using Eli, right?
Right.
Is there any reason to not, has Eli withdrawn, or is he not available, or?
I mean, there are several items that we have on his desk, so to speak, and I'm concerned about being able to turn around these reviews fairly quickly, and I think, you know, he was able to review the RFQ agreement, and it was, you know, a pretty short response, which is fine, and said, you know, these are all pretty normal clauses. When it gets into construction phase, it's different, which is understandable. Services agreement is generally less of a liability or risk than some of the bigger contracts, and I think that a diverse, you know, body of counsel is helpful.
Kind of odd, though.
I'm sorry?
It's sort of odd, that's an odd, normally enterprises concentrate and they use one attorney for all sort, you know, they'll have somebody for labor matters, they'll have somebody for contractual matters, they'll have, you know, you only diversify with respect to needing diverse expertise. And what makes us unique when engaging attorneys is that we're a public utility. And so we should have an attorney who understands what it is to be a public utility and what applies. And then you're absolutely right. We should diversify past that if we have some other need.
But if we don't if you're not confident in being able to obtain the services that you need, then we should remedy that.
Well, that's a different issue, but has that been communicated? If we're not getting turnaround from Primer and Piper, then that needs to be communicated to them, and we need to find out what's happening. But this is the first that I'm hearing that that's a problem.
I don't mean to bring it up as though it's a complaint against Primer and Piper. I just know that there are multiple contracts that are coming through, and if there was an opportunity to leverage the fact that there's an attorney that can look at service contracts that have less to do with us being a utility and more so to do with the risk or liabilities there of us as a municipal and a municipal entity.
Yeah,
I hear you though, and I think we can.
Okay. Okay, is there anything else in items? I think the policies discussion, everyone's been saying we need to have a policies discussion, but I think we're not gonna have that discussion right now. Could you please circulate the letter that was received from the Department of Public Service to the board?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're supposed to. That's the case.
Anything else that anybody wanted to discuss in the general manager's report? Okay, so that then takes us back to,
Did we give Sarah what she needs in the way of approval to execute the agreement,
which agreement?
the VTTEC?
No, I think we need to
You're gonna put that-
do that in executive
Gotcha. Sorry, I
session.
lost track of what was going on.
Okay. Okay, let's sort of try and keep these in order. So let's, I move that we go into executive session to discuss the agreement with possible negotiations with Du Bois and King with respect to the engineering study for the hydro plant. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we're gonna have to go off filming. It is 7:14 and the Board of Commissioners is back in session. In executive session, no action was taken. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we direct Sarah, the general manager, to accept the Dubois and King proposal, subject to the addition of some comments made by the Board of Commissioners.
I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Okay, we're gonna need to go into executive session again. I'm sorry. It is 7:15. I move that we go into executive session to discuss an agreement with respect to the VTDEC investigation work plan. Is there a second? The premature disclosure of which would prejudice the interests of the Hardwick Electric Department. It is 7:15 and we are in executive session. It is 7:21 and we are out of executive session. No action was taken. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we direct Sarah to accept the Hangen Bruceland proposal to do the environmental study with no changes.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, was there anything else in the general manager's report that needed to be discussed tonight? If not, I can get Scott to come back in. And there's going to be another executive session.
Is there?
Should we do the July, what you wanted to do on
sure.
those meetings, and then, because then we don't have to keep him here.
Yes.
I still have to stay to break down the room, so you all proceed.
Oh, okay.
I was just gonna propose that we shift the June and July meetings. I have my kids' June meeting, and then the July meeting, there is the VEPSA Board of Directors retreat. And so it would be shifting it to June 24th and June 22nd, but just wanted to propose that as an option. Arrangements can be made either way, but yeah. We'd be shifting it 1 week later. Instead of the third Thursday, it would be the fourth
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Sorry, yes, Tuesday.
So restate those?
Was looking to shift the June meeting to June 24th
Okay.
and July to July 22nd.
Why don't people can take a look at those dates, and if they,
That's fine with me.
Thank you.
I'm not aware of anything at this time. And I would say let's see where we're at. And so we've been joined by Scott Cameron, who is our counsel in connection with the IBEW negotiations. And I'm going to move that we go into executive session to discuss the negotiations of a new IBEW contract. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? It is 7:24, and we are in executive session. It is 8:49, and we are out of executive session. No action was taken. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn. Second and third.
Any objection? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 8:49.
Thank you.